Good morning. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. I'm Barry Bryson, and we're continuing, or beginning, I should say, a new study. We just finished a study of the Psalms, which were written by persons other than anonymous David or Asaph, and we're going to begin a new study today, and will take some time, uh, several months, to go through the Gospel of Luke. It's been a long time since we've done a study of a gospel. We've been studying in the Gospels. We did the Gospel of Mark at one point, all the way through, but I don't think we've done another gospel just from the first chapter, first verse to the end. And we're going to be looking at the Gospel of Luke. We're going to take 2 or 3 days to introduce the Gospel of Luke. We want to ask the question, who is Luke? What is a gospel? And how is Luke's gospel unique? And so today, we're going to talk about who Luke is. Luke is the person who wrote more of the New Testament than anybody else. That's who Luke is. If you go just by number of words, word count, Luke's two books, Luke and Acts, are longer than all of Paul's writings put together, or all of John's writings put together, or all of Peter's writings put together, even if you add Mark into the mix there. He wrote more of the New Testament than any other writer. He is the third gospel writer, one of the three synoptic gospel writers. Matthew, Mark, and Luke are called synoptics because they follow the same general pattern in presenting their gospel. John follows another pattern. But I think we're going to see that Luke has a lot of connections and ties to John. Sometimes he sounds more like John than he does the other synoptic writers. Luke is unique, so far as we know, in all the writers of the New Testament, in that he is clearly a Gentile. And he is clearly a Gentile, although some um, early-ish Christian historians thought he might be a Hellenic Jew, maybe even one of the 70 disciples that are mentioned. But I just don't see that at all. Luke is clearly a Gentile and probably a Roman. Um, um, I think he is in his gospel absolutely precise and exact in his detail for the Roman Empire. He doesn't call the Sea of Galilee, he calls it Lake Tiberias. He always uses the exact Roman term, geographic term, official term for a place name. When he describes Roman officials, governors, military people, he always gives them the exact title they would have had. He is careful to place activities within the framework of other historical events that a Roman reader would have understood, would have recognized, so that when he writes, he's clearly writing to a Roman reader, a Gentile reader, but I think a Roman reader, and and I think he himself is a Roman. He is never mentioned by name in either Luke or Acts, although every historical reference we have to the author of the book of Luke Acts is Luke himself, and of course he fits the description. And so I have no doubt that Luke is the author of Luke Acts. Luke is mentioned, although he doesn't mention himself by name in his writings. Paul mentions him 3 times. He mentions him to the Colossians in the book of Philemon, and these 2 letters were delivered to the same church on the same day by the same 2 people. And he also mentions him in Second Timothy. So let's read these 3 references to Luke in Paul's writings. In Paul writes in Colossians chapter 4, verse 14, Luke, the beloved physician, sends you his greetings, as does also Demas. And then in Philemon 24, same thing. Luke sends his greetings. And then in 2 Timothy, and we're looking at chapter 4, verse 11, Paul writes, at my first defense, no one stood with me. The Lord stood with me. Only Luke is with me. And so Luke is there with Paul in jail in Rome. In fact, he's writing the book of Colossians and Philemon from jail as well. Luke is called a physician. And there's no other way to translate that word. That's what he was. He was a physician, which means he was one of the most highly educated people of his day. Physicians, doctors, had to know how to read a multiplicity of languages because they would have had to research the medical lore of the Greeks, of the Egyptians, of the Persians, as well as the Etruscans, the Romans, um, the Carthaginians, and they would have. Because they would be searching in every source available to them to find a remedy for this and a remedy for that. And the remedies available to them were probably generally effective. Um, these were men who were researchers. What are the remedies we have? But chemicals that we've extracted from the natural world. That's what they would be coming up with as well. Most of the time, the reputable ones, anyway, would be doing that. This is a man who is scholarly. His his gospel is the most polished Greek in the New Testament. Luke and Acts are the most polished Greek in the New Testament. This is someone who has a facility with the Greek language that is beyond that of the Apostle Paul. He just does, and and we see it on display, especially as he introduces his gospel. Just some interesting things. Luke is an eyewitness because much of the book of Acts, at least the second half of the book of Acts, beginning in Acts 16, verse 10, we have a series of sections that are known as W-E passages. We did this, we did that, so that we know the author of the book was there when the shipwrecked, was there when Paul was sent to Rome. So we have those we passages. So he was a helper of the Apostle Paul, at least from the time Paul goes into goes into Macedonia. So we have those we passages starting in Acts chapter 16, verse 10. So we know that he was with the Apostle Paul as early as that. It's also true that not all, but many of the physicians we know about from this period of Roman history, first couple of centuries AD, were manumitted slaves. Chattel slavery was not practiced in the Roman Empire, not in any widespread sense. And the chattel slavery that occurred, those who found themselves as quarry slaves or galley slaves were prisoners or prisoners of war. And so some of the enslaved people in the households of the best families in Rome would have been the best educated, better educated even than their owners. So I'm not saying that Luke is a manumitted slave, but he could have been. He would have been in the majority of people in his profession, it seems, in the first or second century. Okay, next time we want to talk about a gospel. What is a gospel? And so thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.